here's a question about like just the overall concept of sort of that the revisionist history, which I was thinking about, which is it's sort of like the other thing we're talking about, the contagion. Like, where's the line? Where's the line? Because for the longest time, I think for the most part, we were taught like, here's history, and that's what happened, and okay, and I'm going to take a test on that, and now I remember this, and we pass it on, and then at some point, people started kind of going, well, maybe that's not exactly right. Like, history is obviously written by the victors. We know that. And so maybe we got some of that wrong a little bit. But now it's gone full blown into, for a lot of people, like everything's a complete conspiracy theory, right? Like it's completely wrong. And it's totally like, it's total bullshit. And so again, like how do you thread that needle, right? Of being able to say, okay, so there's a bias here, clearly, probably with most of it. However, it's probably based on fact. And figuring out like what we do need to retell in a slightly different lens or through a slightly different lens. And what's like, yeah, you know what, whatever, like, you know what I'm saying? Like just where that line is.
I think it's the model you're using. And I think we get into this trouble because we're not framing history correctly. What we're doing is what happens, and the bad version of this is the person who comes along and says, this story you were told is all wrong. It's actually this. The framers of the American Republic were a bunch of like bigoted white guys who throw out your previous, they're all kind of heroic. That's the wrong frame. It's about layers.
Yes.
So the first layer is totally true. The framers of the American Republic were a bunch of extraordinary, thoughtful, brilliant, courageous people who conceived of the first great functioning democracy in the world out of nothing, right? Second layer, they're complicated. They're human beings, right? Third layer, this is the 18th century, right? They're living. Yeah. Fourth, we can keep going,
yes,
right? And then we can tell their individual stories. These guys have mistresses and they have debts and they tell lies and they get into trouble and they get into fistfights and whatever. We can keep on going down, but it doesn't, just because I've discovered a sixth layer doesn't invalidate the first five.
Right.
We need to kind of hold it in our head that that like all human beings, they're complicated, but we don't, because they're historical figures, often we have lost the complication in the way we tell the story for the first time.
Yep.
And what history does is restore the complication. George Washington is not just a handsome face on a piece of money.
Yep.
He's a human being, right? He did all kinds of like complicated. So once you think about it, I think of what I do as adding layers. And I don't think that any layer invalidates a previous layer. I just think it adds to it.
Yeah. I love that. I always think of it as like trying to at least separate the ideas from the people. So it's like, you know, if you had the Constitution, like if you had no clue who wrote it, great ideas, right? And you don't have to inject the personal lives of the writers, the framers, whatever, into that. It doesn't invalidate anything that's being said there. I mean, I've had this argument too with people like Marcus Aurelius, you know, like rip him apart for slaughtering people or whatever he had to do as an emperor. It's like, but meditations are good. Those are good ideas, guys, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I think that's another, this idea that we're deepening, we're not simplifying, we're deepening our understanding.
Yeah.
That's the function of history. And, you know, we have incredible amount of difficulty at the moment holding two contradictory ideas in our heads.
Yeah, we sure do. Yeah.
And that is the definition of intelligence, right? Yeah. That's what intelligence is.
And is that in and of itself a social contagion right now? That idea of not being able to hold, right?
Yeah. Although I think a lot of what's odd to me is I think most people do that. They do it quietly and without a lot of fanfare. But they are unexpectedly sophisticated in the way they view the world. I remember I had a thing in my book about why did America so quickly change its mind about gay marriage? I have a whole chapter about it. How'd that happen? It's like, everyone who's involved in social change says that's an unprecedented transformation. We went from being adamantly opposed to it and thinking about a constitutional amendment to basically the opposition just dissipating in the course of a couple of years, less than 10 years. And I think there was a lot of that very kind of complicated, a lot of people who would have an emotional problem and a psychological problem with gay marriage, with gay relationships, with simultaneously had people in their lives who were gay, who they realized were like them in many ways. And they didn't have to reconcile this. It wasn't that they threw out the level of personal discomfort they had with some of this stuff. They just kept it. And they said, but you know what? This other thing is actually really important, valuable. And I'm gonna tamp down on one and like build up on the other.
Yeah.
I'm going to allow I'm going to be tolerant of someone else's freedom because I see it's important to them. That's what they did. And I think I love that, actually. I love that people are complicated enough that they don't have to, we're not asking people to swap out their personality for a new personality every time we have some new social change or transformation. We're asking them just to kind of have a little more complexity in the way you see the world, right?
Yeah.
Just accept that, things can be a little different. And that's that, like I said, that capacity of human beings has always impressed me. Of most people are like that. At the fringes, they're not. But
yeah,
I don't spend a lot of time in the fringes. So
yeah,
every time I'm on an airplane and I have a conversation with a woman or guy next to me, I come away impressed by the sophistication with which they see the world. Like, every time. Like, I don't know where I don't know this. I don't see the kind of craziness there. I see people who've got kids and they're worried about the world in which their kids are growing up in, which is kind of what I worry about too, principally. Or I see people who they're worrying about making ends meet, or they're like, they got a parent in an old age home, and it's the same.